The galaxy had rules, and for humans, those rules were chains. They were not made of steel or metal, but of laws and commands written by alien hands. The Galactic Council decided everything where human ships could go, what weapons they could carry, even how their fleets could fight. They called it keeping order, but every human knew the truth. It was control, it was power, it was fear. For over 100 years, humans had been the obedient soldiers of the galaxy, fighting wars they didn't start, dying in battles that weren't theirs. While alien commanders gave orders from the safety of their flagships, that was the way. It had always been. But for Captain Elias Ward, it was the way things would end. Elias sat in the command chair of the Vanguard, a sleek human-built warship armed only with what the Council allowed. That meant light cannons, basic shields, and no long-range missiles. Against most enemies, it was enough if they followed the rules. But today, the Council had given them an order that made no sense. They were patrolling Sector 9, an area known for strange disappearances. Every report from the sector spoke of enemy movements, of ships vanishing without distress calls. Elias had expected heavy reinforcements, but instead, their alien commander, High Overseer Varric, sent them in alone. No backup, no support, no questions. Patrol and report. Nothing else, Varric had ordered. His voice had the cold, arrogant tone of someone who saw humans as pawns, not people. The Vanguard drifted past the shattered remains of an old mining station. The air was tense, the crew quiet. On the radar, faint signals appeared to organize to be debris. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Magnify Sector 3, he ordered. The screen sharpened, revealing something that made his stomach twist. Hidden between asteroid shadows was an enemy outpost. It wasn't abandoned. It was alive with movement. Ships were docked, weapons powered, fighters launching in formation. This was no minor threat. This was a staging ground for an invasion. Elias sent the visual feed to the Overseer's flagship. Minutes later, the reply came, sharp and dismissive. "Disregard. Continue patrol. Do not engage." For a moment, the bridge of the Vanguard was silent. The only sound, the hum of the engines. Elias could see the disbelief on his crew's faces. They knew the truth. Those enemy ships would strike somewhere soon. Somewhere unprepared. Somewhere human. "Sir?" His first officer, Lieutenant Mara Cole, asked carefully, "Do we follow orders?" Elias stared at the glowing image of the enemy base. Every instinct screamed to strike now, to destroy it before it could threaten their worlds. But the chains of the Council were still wrapped around his neck. Disobey, and they would strip his rank, take his ship, maybe even erase his crew from service records. Yet something inside him had already shifted. He remembered the faces of human soldiers, lost in pointless battles, sent to die because an alien commander thought their lives were cheap. He remembered the day his brother's ship was ordered to hold a position without shields, just to buy time for a Council vessel to escape. His brother never came home. Elias stood slowly, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of a decision that could not be undone. "Mara," he said, "record everything. Every ship, every weapon, every movement, and keep it hidden." The crew moved quickly, scanning the enemy base, locking the data in a secure channel the Council couldn't access. Elias knew what he was doing was dangerous, Dresden, in the Council's eyes, but the truth had to be preserved. One day someone would need to see this, someone who could act. When the scan was complete, Elias gave the official report, the Overseer. "Wanted. No threats detected. Continuing patrol." Eli tasted bitter in his mouth, but it was the first crack in the chains. That night, when the ship's lights dimmed and most of the crew rested, Elias gathered his senior officers in the strategy room. The doors sealed with a quiet hiss. No one spoke at first. They all knew why they were there. Elias placed a small projector on the table, showing the enemy base in perfect detail. He let the silence stretch until the weight of it pressed on every heart in the room. "This," he said finally, "is what they told us to ignore. And this is why I will never take their orders at face value again." A murmur ran through the officers, some in fear, others in quiet agreement. Elias leaned forward, his eyes hard. The council thinks we are tools, replaceable, obedient. But I am done being their pawn. From this day forward, we obey no one but ourselves. No one argued. Not because they weren't afraid they were, because they all felt the same fire in their bones. Something had begun on the vanguard that night, something the council could not see yet. It was small now, just a spark, spurt swin. Fed by anger and truth, could become wildfires. And this one was about to burn through the galaxy. The next morning, the vanguard resumed its patrol, but something in the air had changed. The crew moved with the same discipline, the same routine, yet beneath their calm expressions. There was an unspoken agreement they were no longer blindly following orders. Elias could see it in the way Lieutenant Mara's eyes lingered on the tactical display, or how Ensign Hale kept double-checking long-range scans without being told. They were watching for more than what the council wanted. They were watching. For the truth, hours passed without incident, until the radar pinged again. 3 faint blips appeared, closing fast. They weren't large ships, probably scouts, but their formation was tight, their course precise. Elias ordered a magnification. And there they were, sleek enemy vessels, painted black to blend into space. They were scanning the vanguard in return, testing range, testing response time. Overseer Varric will want to report, Mara said quietly. Elias didn't reply. He already knew what Varric would say: don't engage, don't interfere, just observe. That was the council's way. Let threats grow until they could justify a full-scale operation under their control. But Elias couldn't forget the enemy base they had seen. These ships weren't random patrols. They were connected. If they let them go, the danger would only grow. Sir, orders. McKay asked, his voice tense. Elias stood, his decision forming like steel in his mind. Helm, change course to intercept. The bridge went silent for a heartbeat. Intercepting without clearance was a direct violation of council battle law. The crew knew this, but no one protested. Instead, Mara gave the smallest nod, as if she had been waiting for this moment. The vanguard swung toward the enemy ships, engines flaring as they picked up speed. Target their lead vessel, Elias ordered. Shields up, weapons hot. No warning shots. The first enemy ship reacted instantly, breaking formation and pulling away. The others followed, scattering like startled animals. Elias knew this tactic. They would try to draw him away, split his focus, then attack from behind. But humans had learned many lessons in the Council's wars. One of those lessons was simple. End the fight before it begins. Lock on and fire, Elias said. The vanguard's cannons roared, sending streaks of light across the void. Elias' lead vessel's shields flared and collapsed, its hull splitting under the impact. The explosion lit up the darkness, fragments spinning into the void. The second ship swung wide, trying to flank, but the vanguard turned faster, its guns finding their mark. Another burst, another kill. The third ship didn't stay. Defite jumped to light speed, fleeing into the black. Enemy retreat confirmed. Hale reported, his voice half shaken, half thrilled. Elias took a slow breath, knowing the real danger was only beginning. A combat log like this would reach Varric within hours. There would be questions, accusations, maybe even a direct order to stand down. The council didn't care about victories if they weren't victories on their terms. Sure enough, the transmission came not long after. Varric's face appeared on the holoscreen, eyes burning with controlled rage. Captain Ward, he said, his voice like a knife, you acted without clearance. Explain yourself. Elias kept his tone calm. We detected enemy vessels on an approach vector. They were scouts, gathering data on our position. Eliminating them was the safest option. You were ordered to observe, Varric snapped. Your defiance compromises council strategy. With respect, Overseer, Elias said, leaning forward, your strategy would have let those scouts return to their fleet. That would compromise human lives. My first duty is to protect my crew and our people. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Varric's eyes narrowed. Get yourself, Captain. This conversation will be reported to the council. You will await further orders. The holoscreen went dark. Mara exhaled slowly. He's going to try to pull us out. I know, Elias said, his jaw tightening. But until they send someone to take this ship from me, we keep moving. And we keep fighting on our terms. That night, Elias met with his officers again. The decision they faced was no longer about one battle, it was about every mission from this point forward. If they stayed in line, they would keep their ranks, their ship, and their lives. But they would also watch threats grow unchecked, waiting for the council's permission to act. If they broke rank, they could protect their people, but at the cost of becoming outlaws in their own fleet. In the end, there was no debate. Every officer in the room chose the same path. The vanguard would continue to follow patrol routes, at least on paper, but from this day forward, they would hunt. Threats before the council even knew they existed. Elias looked around the room, seeing the same quiet fire in every face. We've taken the first step, he said, but we'll need allies. Others who are willing to break the rules. Mara leaned forward, her voice steady. I know a few captains who've been thinking the same way. They just needed someone to make the first move. Elias allowed himself a small smile. Then let's give them something to follow. In the cold, endless dark of space, one human ship had just stepped out of line. The council didn't know it yet, but the rules of war were already starting to change. Word of the Vanguard's defiance traveled faster than Elias had expected. Within days, quiet, encrypted messages began slipping through the secure channels. They came from human captains scattered across the outer patrols, each one cautious, but direct. Some sent only a single line. We saw what you did. We're listening. Others were bolder, asking for meeting points, suggesting shared intelligence. Elias read every one carefully, his mind building a picture of something larger than a single rogue ship. But with every new ally, the risk grew. The council had eyes everywhere. Overseer Varric was no fool. He would already be tracking the vanguards' movements, looking for signs of deviation from official patrols. Elias knew he couldn't openly gather ships, said, had to be done in shadows, hidden inside routine. Patrol routes became meeting paths. Supply stops became coded rendezvous points. To anyone watching, it was business as usual. To those in the know, it was the birth of a fleet. Their first gathering happened in the dead zone near the Eris Belt, a place where comms went dark and scanners were unreliable. One by one, the shapes of human warships emerged from the asteroid field, their hulls scarred from battles that were never officially recorded. There were 7 ships at first, each captain stepping into Ilias's briefing room with the wary look of someone who knew one wrong word could mean exile worse. This isn't rebellion for the sake of rebellion, Elias told them, standing. At the head of the table, it's survival. The council won't act until the threat is too big to contain. By then it will be too late. We act now, on our terms. Captain Wren, a broad-shouldered veteran with a voice like gravel, leaned forward. And when the council finds out, because they will, Elias agreed. And when that happens, we'll already be strong enough that they can't shut us down without losing everything in the process. It was a dangerous promise, but it was the only way. One by one, the captains nodded. The alliance was sealed. Not with papers or oaths, but with a shared understanding they would protect humanity. Even if it meant standing against the very system they served. In the weeks that followed, their network grew. 2 more ships joined after a skirmish on the Kovar Rim, where the Vanguard arrived just in time to drive off a raiding party. Another came from deep inside council territory, its captain disillusioned after being ordered to retreat from a colony under attack. Every victory, every rescue, pulled more ships into the fold. But Varric was tightening his grip. Council directives became stricter, patrol zones narrower, orders more heavily monitored. Elias received constant summons to justify his movements. He gave them answers, half-truths wrapped in military precision, but he could feel the noose drawing in. Sooner or later they would send an inspection team. Then came the intel that changed everything. One of Wren's scouts intercepted enemy transmissions plans for a massive assault, not against a human fleet, but against a human colony. The target was Veros Prime, a growing settlement with over 3 million people. The council's official response was to prepare evacuation. Contingencies, no reinforcements, no defense. Just retreat. Elias called an emergency meetup in the dead zone. The room was thick with anger as he relayed the council's stance. "They'll let Vero's prime burn," Mara said, her voice low but shaking. "They'll call it a tragedy, then use it as an excuse to escalate the war on their terms." Ow. Slammed a fist on the table. "Not if we get there first." Elias looked around at the faces of his captains. They all knew what this meant. If they moved to defend Varro's prime, they would be openly defying council orders. There would be no way to hide it this time. It would be the moment they crossed the line completely. "We're not ready for a full war with the council," Elias said quietly. "But if we don't act now, millions will die. And if we wait for their permission, we'll be no better than them." No one spoke for a long moment. Then Ren's gravel voice broke the silence. "Then we make our stand at Vero's prime, and we make damn sure it's a fight the galaxy remembers." The vote was unanimous. The hidden fleet would move. As the meeting broke and the ships prepared to depart, Elias stood at the viewport watching. The dark shapes slipped back into the void. The council still believed they controlled humanity's warships. They were wrong. Out here in the silent depths, a new power was forming, one that would not ask for permission to save its own people. And soon, that power was going to show itself. The moment the hidden fleet dropped out of warp over Vero's prime, the stars lit up with enemy fire. Elias had known it would be bad, but the scale of the attack still caught him off guard. The horizon of the planet was already glowing red, streaked with the burning remains of orbital defense satellites. Enemy cruisers moved in tight formations, pounding the colony's last shield arrays with relentless precision. If those shields failed, the bombardment would turn Varro's prime into a wasteland in minutes. "This is Captain Elias of the Vanguard," he said into the com, his voice steady. "Despite the chaos, all human ships break formation and engage. Prioritize shield protection and enemy capital ships. No one touches the colony." Acknowledgements came in rapid bursts. The fleet split like a blade, tearing through the enemy's flanks with surgical strikes. Human ships were smaller than most alien warcraft, but faster and more unpredictable. They cut in close, firing at weak points and vanishing before counterfire could land. The enemy had expected an easy kill. They hadn't expected a coordinated human fleet with nothing to lose. Inside the Vanguard's bridge, Mara tracked shield integrity. "They're holding for now, but the Council's going to see this, Elias. They're going to send their own ships." Elias didn't look at her. "Good. Let them come." On the colony surface, terrified civilians watched the battle unfold like a storm in the sky. Explosions flashed against the dark, followed by streaks of plasma fire. The ground shook each time a massive ship went down. Above them, their supposed saviors' human ships operating without council orders were rewriting the battle entirely. The enemy commander, realizing the tide was turning, redirected the heavy destroyers toward the Vanguard. Elias saw the move instantly. "Ren, Maran me," he ordered. "Take them head on. If they break through, the colony's done." The clash was brutal. The Vanguard's shields flared under repeated strikes, alarms screaming across the bridge. A single hit breached the portside armor, sending a shockwave through the decks. Still, Elias kept pressing forward, pushing his ship between the destroyers and the colony. Then, just as the first destroyer began to pull away under heavy fire, Mara's voice cut through the noise. "Incoming Warp Signatures Council, warships." A heartbeat. Hope surged. Maybe they'd come to help. The scans told a different story. Council ships didn't open fire on the enemy. They locked targeting systems on the humans. "They're coming for us." Overcomes. We knew this day would come. The Council fleet broadcast a single message, cold and final: stand down and disengage. Oh. You were in violation of direct orders. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. Elias didn't even bother to respond. Instead, he opened the all-fleet channel. "If you're with me, keep fighting. If you're not, break off now. No one will think less of you." No ship turned away. The Vanguard and its allies slammed into the destroyers with everything they had. Plasma tore through enemy hulls. Missiles punched deep into engine cores. And the sky above Veros Prime burned white with the light of ships dying. The Council fleet, unwilling to fire while humans fought an active enemy, held back, but their presence was a shadow over every maneuver. Finally, with a final thunderous blast, the last enemy ship broke apart and fell toward the planet's atmosphere in a trail of molten debris. The colony was safe for now, but there was no victory celebration. As the surviving human ships regrouped, the Council transmitted new orders. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Elias knew what that meant. Arrest, trials, stripping of command. He looked around at his crew, then at the battered but unbroken fleet on the tactical display. No, he said quietly, not today. Engines roared as the hidden fleet turned away from Veros Prime, slipping back into deep space before the Council could close in. They had saved millions of lives, but in doing so they had crossed the point of no return. From this moment forward, they were no longer the Council's soldiers. They were something else entirely. The stars had never felt so hostile. Out in the fringe sectors, the void was supposed to be freedom uncharted, unpatrolled, untouched by the politics of the core worlds. But now every flicker in the darkness could be a Council scout ship. Every faint pulse on the sensors a hunter's approach. The humans of the hidden fleet had saved Veros Prime, but the price was written in the orders the Council sent after them. Capture on sight. Termination if resistance is met. Captain Elias stood on the Vanguard's dimly lit bridge, staring at the tactical display. 3 red blips pulsed at the edge of the grid, slowly closing in. They're hurting us, he muttered, trying to box us into the asteroid belt. Mara, leaning over the sensor console, kept her eyes locked on the readings. They've got faster drives. If we run straight, they'll catch us. If we hide, they'll scan us out. So, what's the plan? Elias didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted to the blackness beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, in the unlit lanes between systems, the fleet's survival depended on being less predictable than their pursuers. Ren, Elias said finally, "What's the nearest system with a gas giant?" Rydron 6, Ren replied, tapping in coordinates. "But it's dead space, no colonies, no stations, nothing but storms." "Perfect," Elias said. "Plot a course. We're going to disappear inside it." The fleet burned hard for Rydron 6, but the Council ships followed, their sleek white hulls cutting through the dark like blades. Each time the humans tried to shake them with sudden course changes, the pursuers adapted, predicting the moves as though reading from a playbook. By the time they reached the swirling mass of Rydron 6, the enemy was close enough to be a constant shadow. Lightning storms flickered across the gas giant's surface, illuminating its violent shifting clouds. The place was a graveyard for careless pilots' massive pressure pockets, electromagnetic surges, and winds that could tear a battleship apart. The Vanguard plunged into the upper atmosphere, the rest of the fleet following in tight formation. Instantly, the ship's hull groaned under the strain, alarms flashing warnings about stress fractures. "They won't follow us this deep," Mara said. Though her voice betrayed doubt. "They will," Elias replied. "But they won't know where we'll come out." The humans dove deeper, the swirling clouds swallowing them whole. Sensors became useless static from the storms washed out every signal. Inside the cockpit, the crew relied on instinct, memory, and dead reckoning. It was Ren who broke the silence. "Council ships are entering the atmosphere. We've got about 3 minutes before they close the gap." Elias gave a sharp nod. "All ships initiate Ghost Protocol." Lights across the fleet dimmed to near black. Engines went silent, replaced by minimal thrusters. Hull plating shifted, dispersing heat to blend with the surrounding atmosphere. The hidden fleet became nothing more than drifting shadows in a world of violent clouds. Moments later, the first Council warship roared past, its search beams stabbing through the murk. A second ship followed, scanning in wide arcs, hunting for the faintest trace of life. But the humans had vanished into the chaos, slipping into pressure tunnels and electromagnetic dead zones, where even the most advanced scanners failed. Hours passed in that silent, crushing darkness, The council ships swept the area again and again, but found nothing. One by one, they pulled out, assuming their prey had been lost to the storms. When the last white glint of a council hall disappeared into the black sky, Elias finally spoke into the com. All ships maintain radio silence until clear space. They think we're gonna let's keep it that way. As the fleet ascended through the atmosphere, battered but intact, Ren leaned toward Elias. We can't keep running forever. I know, Elias said quietly. Next time, we turn the hunt around. In that moment, every person aboard the Vanguard knew this wasn't just survival anymore. The Council thought they had fleshed out traitors. Instead, they had created hunters of their own. The Council thought they had driven the humans to the edge of the galaxy, that the hidden fleet was nothing more than prey darting from shadow to shadow. But prey learns quickly. Sometimes prey grows teeth. Days after the escape from Rydran 6, the fleet drifted through the silence of the scorched Belta star system burned hollow by an ancient war. Its planets reduced to cinders and its asteroid. Fields littered with the wreckage of forgotten battles. It was the perfect graveyard for the trap Elias had in mind. Mara stood beside him on the Vanguard's command deck, studying the tactical overlay. You want them to follow us here? Into this mess? It's suicide. Not for us, Elias replied. We know this field now. They don't. We've mapped every magnetic pocket, every debris drift, every asteroid with a hollow core. Once they're inside, they'll be blind. And we'll have the advantage. The plan was dangerous, but humans had reached a point where danger was their only currency. Supplies were running low, morale was fraying, and constant retreat was killing them faster than any battle could. A decisive strike was the only way to send a message the war wasn't over, and humanity would choose its ground. The bait came. First, a small detachment of lightly armed ships broke off from the main fleet, transmitting faint distress calls in encrypted bursts. Just enough for the Council to intercept, just enough to make them think they had stumbled upon the stragglers of a broken force. When the Council fleet appeared, it came in fast 3 battlecruisers and a dozen escort ships, their formation. Tight weapons primed, they chased the fleeing detachment straight into the dense asteroid belt, never realizing that the rest of the human fleet was already waiting in the shadows. The first stage of the trap was silence. Human ships drifted cold and dark among the asteroids, hidden from sensors by the metal-rich rocks. The Council ships moved in carefully now, their forward cannons glowing in the darkness as they scanned the field. Then, on Elias's command, the silence shattered. Hidden charges buried in asteroids erupted in blinding bursts, scattering molten shards through the void. The explosions weren't meant to destroy, but to disrupt, to force the Council ships to break formation, to drive them into the mapped corridors where human firepower waited. The second stage came instantly. Human strike craft swarmed from the debris fields like hornets from a nest, targeting engines and weapons arrays with surgical precision. Mara's voice cut through the chaos overcomes, hit and fade. Don't give them a target to lock. The Council fought back hard, their energy cannons ripping through asteroids, their escorts scrambling to shield the larger warships. But in the shifting maze of the belt, they couldn't track the humans long enough to land a killing blow. Ilias's plan hinged on one moment, and it came when the lead Council battlecruiser moved into the corridor the humans had marked. A volley of torpedoes from the Vanguard struck its midsection, punching through armor and igniting its main reactor. The explosion tore through the corridor, scattering the escort ships and sending shockwaves across the field. Pull back! Elias ordered not to retreat, but to lure the surviving Council ships deeper, where the last stage of the trap waited. More hit explosives detonated, collapsing asteroid walls behind them. The hunters were now caged by the time the humans disengaged. Council fleet was in ruins too, battlecruisers disabled. Multiple escorts destroyed, the rest drifting helplessly in the debris. As the Vanguard pulled away into deep space, Mara looked at Elias. We could have finished them all. Elias shook his head. We didn't need to. We just told the galaxy something far louder. And what's that? She asked. That humanity doesn't run, Elias said. We choose the battlefield, and we decide who walks away. The message would spread faster than any signal. Council's mighty hunters had been broken in their own pursuit. The prey had become predators and the war had just changed forever.